All right, so good evening, everyone. As many of you know, my name is Attorney Veronica McClendon. I am an attorney in Macon, Georgia. My office, we serve the entire state of Georgia, but we're located in Macon. And I'm just so happy to be here to talk with you all about estate planning. If you saw my post on Facebook, you may have seen where I mentioned that in this time that we're in, there's a lot of uncertainty. Some people feel happy, some people feel sad, some people just feel like they don't know what to feel. There are a lot of feelings going on here, especially in the United States. And sometimes people might feel like things are out of their control. And what I mentioned is that estate planning is one of those areas where you have a sense of control. It's a way that you can say, I may not be able to control everything else. I may not be able to control everybody else, but at least when it comes to the things that I own and the people that I leave those things to, the people that I put in charge, at least I have some semblance of control over those things. And everything else, you can just let whoever needs to handle those things handle those things. And the things that are within your control, we want to make sure that we take care of those. So that is my thought process behind this webinar, is to help you all to see that when it comes to our personal assets, there's a way for us to either just let the chips fall where they may and let everybody just do what they want to do with the things we leave behind, or we can create a plan that says this is how I want things to be done. And the goal with that is not only to be able to say where your stuff goes, but it's also to make sure that the people you leave behind, your loved ones, they're not fighting over things that are things that could have been avoided. So, what we're going to talk about today is Crisis Averted. That's the name of this talk, Crisis Averted, the power of proactive estate planning. And the idea behind that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my slides while I continue to talk. But the idea behind using this title is, just as I mentioned, that a lot of times people just, when it comes to their assets after they're gone, things just happen the way they happen. Whoever's in charge, that's something that somebody else decides. The person who passed away and left their things, they had nothing to do with what happened. And a lot of times for families, this leads to chaos, it leads to fussing and arguing, it leads to relationships being broken. And so for me and my firm, I'm really excited that we get to help families to be proactive about the process so that they're not caught blindsided after a loved one dies. So, more about our firm, and I know many of you are familiar with us, but we provide heirs property, estate planning, and probate legal services to help farmers, landowners, and other legacy driven individuals build wealth, increase their income, and secure their legacies. So, when it comes to estate planning for my firm, it's not just about filling in the blanks on papers, it's about how do we create a plan that not only enhances your life right now, but it enhances the lives of those who may be left behind after you're gone. It also creates clarity during your lifetime if there ever became a time where you are not able to manage your own affairs. We don't want to leave it up to chance as to what happens to even things that are very personal to us, like who makes medical decisions for us, who makes financial decisions for us. We want to make sure that we have these decisions in the right hands. So you see here this picture of this family fighting. It looks like they're two brothers and the sisters fighting over who knows what. But for the purpose of this seminar, we're going to assume that they are fighting over what to do with their mother's house. Their mother died and left behind a house and other assets, and they all have their own opinion about what they think should happen to their mother's house. One of them wants to live there. The other one thinks they should sell it and everybody needs to use whatever money they get to go get their own place to live. And one of them just wants everybody to get along so that they can grieve in peace and not have to fight over things that are just material things. But in families, if you have a family, you know that it's not always so easy. there's a lot of emotions that come after a family member dies. Sometimes, people are just not thinking clearly because they are grieving. But other times it may feel like I never got the things that I felt like I should have gotten from my loved one while they were here. So this is my last ditch effort at getting something. So when it comes to estate planning, we get to put something in place so that hopefully our family members are not left to just fight over what's behind. I wanted to share a few true stories, but before I do, I just want to invite y'all, if I have questions that come up as I'm talking, share them in the chat and I will do my best to respond to them while we're going through the information. And if needed, we'll wait till the end. But feel free to share in the chat if you have questions or if you just want to say amen or that's true or I agree or that's so sad. Whatever you want to say, I want y'all to engage with me in the chat, engage with each other as long as we're loving and positive. But I just want y'all to feel like you are here participating with me as I go through this information. So I'm going to share a few true stories of families that I've actually worked with and situations that have come up where the plan didn't work out the way that we would have hoped it would have worked out, or there was no plan at all. So situations where I've had families that have come to my office after they lost a property due to mortgage foreclosure. And what typically has happened, their loved one died. They had a mortgage on the property that they lived in. And that family member who took control of the property, they continued to pay the mortgage every month on time. But they didn't realize that something happened with the homeowner's insurance policy. The premium went up significantly, and the escrow account was not enough to cover the homeowner's insurance. So the mortgage lender increased the monthly payments on the mortgage, but the family was not aware because once that loved one died, they just continued paying the mortgage. No one notified the lender that the person had died and that someone else was now making the payments. So in that case, before they could even do anything about it, before they could get to me, they're getting notice in the mail that someone else had purchased the property and was getting ready to evict them. So that's the one situation that I have experienced where there was no plan in place and the family didn't take action quickly enough to save their family property. We had situations where someone died and they didn't think they owned anything. The only assets that they did own, they left in to their spouse. They had their spouse named as a beneficiary, and they thought everything. Well, I don't know what they thought, but I'm assuming they thought everything was taken care of because they had everything in their spouse's name. Well, unexpectedly, someone else left them insurance, named them as a life insurance beneficiary. And that person died just a few days before they did. So, this person whose estate I'm dealing with, they inherited money a few days before they died. They had no idea they had received this inheritance. But then the family members are now trying to figure out how do we get this life insurance policy money when the person who was supposed to receive it has now died. So they had to come to me. We filed a petition to have one of the children appointed as the administrator, but there were several people who were heirs of the deceased person who were minors or who had some kind of situation that had come up where there had to be attorneys appointed to represent those individuals. We had to create special bank accounts to manage those funds left to those minors. Just things that if there was some kind of estate plan, the person who died, they would have been able to say, if anything that I own goes to minor children, I want it to be put in trust for them. I want these people to be their trustees. There were ways that we could have prevented having to file all the different things we had to file in court. There were just all kinds of issues, money used that could have been going to the family that's instead used to pay lawyers and court fees and fees to serve people. It was all kinds of stuff that happened as a result of that case, where if there was an estate plan in place, that family would have been able to utilize more of that money and have a lot more peace going through the process. We had situations where someone did create a trust, but they didn't transfer the assets into the trust properly. And in this case, this was family property, heirs property. It ended up in the hands of a spouse when it was supposed to go to the deceased person's brothers and sisters. But because they didn't write a deed that transferred the property into the trust, they ended up with a situation where we're having to probate the deceased person's estate and then buy out the surviving spouse and all these things that had to happen in order to get this asset to the brothers and sisters as the deceased person would have intended. We had situations where people create trusts, they put the property in there, but the trust details were not clear. And so we end up in a situation where we still had to go to court and fight things out because there were some errors in the way that the trust was drafted, and we had to go to court to get some clarity on how to define those terms. Families who had to place a loved one in long-term care, once that person dies, now the state is looking to be repaid, and they're wondering, how are we going to get paid for the money that we paid out for them to be in a nursing home? So then this family ended up losing a significant amount of their loved one's property because of what's called estate recovery, where the state has paid money to support this person being in a nursing home. And now that they're deceased, the state wants to be reimbursed. And the only thing that they could get reimbursed from were these family assets. And so the family ended up having to have those assets sold so that the state could be paid back for that Medicaid debt. And so these are things that we are trying to avoid. This last one here, children from a previous relationship forced the surviving spouse from their home. So this was a situation where there was a husband and wife. The husband had children from a prior relationship. When that relationship ended, he married this particular person, the surviving spouse. They were together for 20 years in this house that they bought together. When the husband died, his part of the property, his half interest, was split between the surviving spouse and his children from the previous relationship. And their mother told them, you do everything you can to make her life hard. And in that situation, the children decided to force the sale of the property so that the surviving spouse had to move out. And so these are situations that I'm sure you can imagine cause a lot of chaos in a family, relationships permanently ruined that could have been salvaged if there was a good plan in place. And for me, this is unacceptable. Families are losing resources that they could be using to finance an education, help support someone in starting a business, providing someone with a place to live. But instead, these family assets are being lost without fair compensation, and the families are suffering as a result. And so, what I'm wanting to do with helping people with estate planning is to create an alternative reality where instead of things just happening however state law dictates it, we're able to be in the driver's seat and create a plan that our loved ones can depend on. I want us to look like this happy family. Instead of the family that was fighting, I want there to be harmony, to be joy, to know that everyone's provided for. Many times, yes, we are grieving. I don't want to say many times, we're grieving. If a loved one has died, there is a grieving process that has to happen. But that grieving process can be made a little bit less, it can be a little less painful if the family is working together through that process instead of adding that extra layer of family members fighting in the process of grieving. And y'all know that the grieving makes it worse, that people say things to people they never would have said before and do things they never would have done before, but they're not thinking clearly. And so that's why I have such a passion for helping people with their estate planning. And I know there are some of you who are here who are wondering, what is an estate plan? I know one big misconception that a lot of people have had is that estate planning is something only rich people have to do. I've heard many of people say, well, I don't really have an estate, so why do I need an estate plan? The definition of an estate is all of the money and property that a person owns, particularly at the time of their death. So if you are somebody who did anything over their lifetime, more than likely you have some kind of money, some kind of property at the time of your death. Some people will have, a whole lot of real estate and investment accounts and bank accounts and other assets. And some people may not have any real estate. They may only have some savings in a bank account or money that they received in a checking account. But regardless of whether you have $5 when you go, or 500, or 500,000, or 5 million, you still have an estate. Another thing about an estate is that someone may die and they may think, well, I don't really have any property, so I don't have an estate. I have cases now where people died not knowing that let me put it this way. Someone may have died as a result of an accident or as a result of someone taking their life. And so as a result, there is some kind of compensation that's due to the family to try to make things, I don't even know, I can't even, to compensate for that loss to the extent that that's possible. In order to have those funds claimed, a lot of times an administrator has to be appointed over their estate in order to have someone who has responsibility over their estate and to be able to distribute whatever money comes from that lawsuit to the loved ones that are left behind. If you have a will, you get to name who would be that person in that situation. So even people who don't currently own assets during their lifetime, there could be some situation that arises after their death where their family members would be entitled to some kind of a settlement, whether it's from a lawsuit or even from it could be some kind of government program where people were injured from a chemical that was in the water or whatever it might be. And there's a victim compensation program that the family can benefit from. But first, they have to get someone appointed over that deceased person's estate. And so in this case, it can be helpful to have an estate plan in place because at least you have clear instructions for what happens in the event that you own stuff at the time of your death that you didn't even anticipate. So I say that to say, everybody has some level of an estate, whether it's what people would consider to be significant or if it's not significant. Everyone has an estate, and it's helpful to have an estate plan. An estate plan not only covers what happens to your money and property after you die, but it also covers situations where you may be ill or unable to make decisions for yourself, and you need a financial representative or a medical representative to make financial or healthcare decisions for you. Your estate plan can cover those things as well. Also, if you have people that you care for, you may have minor children, or you may have loved ones who have a disability that you care for either financially or that you are their primary caregiver. In some situations, you can even provide for someone else to assume their care after you're gone if that's needed, or if you become ill. Let's say that you're taking care of a sibling who has a disability that they can't make decisions for themselves, and you become ill. Who's going to take over things for that person? Your estate plan can address that as well. So I'm going to continue on, but I know I said a whole lot already. So if you have any questions, or if I'm just moving too fast, I'm talking too much, or giving too much information so far, let me know in the chat and I'll do my best to adjust so that I can make sure I'm not losing y'all. Also, I would ask if you just let me know in the chat. I'm still here. I'm still tracking, just so I know I'm not just talking to people who are just like, what is she talking about? So just let me know in the chat if you're here with me, or if I need to slow down or clarify something. So we just talked about what an estate plan can do, what it addresses. And some of the questions that might be asked are, who will have authority to make healthcare or financial decisions for you if you are unable to speak for yourself? Who will be responsible for making final decisions on your behalf? Who will inherit your assets after you're gone? And how will you pay for long-term care needs if you become unable to care for yourself? So I want y'all to think about these questions. Um, is there anybody here who any one of these questions you never thought about that? So there's some people here perhaps that have never thought about any of those questions. But if it's at least one question on this list that you hadn't really thought much about, I would love to hear from you to let me know. Because I just want to know, like, what kind of things are people already thinking about? I know one thing that a lot of people say with long-term care, when I ask them, I say, hey, people are living longer these days. They are living longer and their healthcare needs are changing. Do you have a plan in place to pay for long-term care if you had to go to a nursing home or if you had to have someone come into your home to care for you? How will you pay for that? How will your family members pay for that? And I think that's probably on this list one of the main things that people hadn't really thought about, where they're realizing that, wow, if I needed to go to a nursing home, it's going to be a huge financial burden on my family. Or some people have actually been through it with their own parents or loved ones, and they realize that there's a lot more planning that they need to put in place. The question of who makes decisions for you if you're still alive, but you need someone to make medical decisions for you because you could have been in an accident, you could be having surgery. Many of us hadn't really thought about that. Like, who would make decisions for us? For those who are married, you might assume that it would be your spouse. But if you're not married, would it be your parents? Would it be your children? Would it be your friend who you trust more than either of those groups of people? We really need to think about these things and not only think about them, talk to our family members to make sure they know what our wishes are, and then also make sure it's in a legally binding document that's going to clearly state what our wishes are. I just want to thank everybody for their feedback in the chat to let me know that y'all are still with me. If you are a business owner, your plan or landowner, your plan is going to involve a bit more. You're not just dealing with what happens to my personal bank account or my house. You're talking about business assets. So you may own a building for your business, or your business may have its own bank accounts. You may even have contracts, and you might not have thought about contracts as being an asset. But let's say that you are doing work with someone and they are paying you $10,000 a month to get a job done. If something happened to you, who gets to continue that work? Does the money continue to come to your business? Does someone else step in to do the work for you? You need to make sure you have a clear business succession plan if you own a business as well. You want to make sure that you have clear instructions for how to transition your business operations and that know-how. A lot of times as business owners, we just say, I'm starting a business, and we go in there, we get the proper paperwork filed. Sometimes we don't even get the proper paperwork filed. We just start telling people I offer this service and I offer this product, and you start taking people's money and you start doing the service for them. But you hadn't really thought about, what about if I'm not able to fulfill this on my own? If I get sick or something happens to me, how do I make sure that my clients continue to be served? How do I make sure that the people who inherit my business or take it over after me will maintain the good name and the goodwill that I've built into this business? So you want to make sure you have a clear plan for passing on your operations and just how you do the things you do. A lot of times when people are thinking about estate planning, or when people come to this webinar, they're like, okay, tell me, should I get a will or should I get a trust? And they just want to know those things. So yes, there are documents that go into an estate plan. And so I'm just going to list those things here. You might have a will. More than likely, everybody's going to have a will. If you go to an attorney for estate plan, your plan is going to incorporate a will to some degree. A trust may be included in your plan. Some people will want a trust. And so if you have a trust, you're also going to have a will as like a backup plan. Just in case your trust doesn't work out, you have that will in place as a safety net. If you have a business, you need to have your business entity set up, and you also need to have operating agreement if you have an LLC, bylaws with a corporation, LLP, you need partnership agreements. We don't want to be running businesses and not having these documents in place. An advanced directive for healthcare that deals with who makes medical decisions for you and what kind of decisions do they have the authority to make on your behalf. It's a way to take some of that burden off of your family. If you've ever had a loved one who was sick and there were some end of life decisions that had to be made for them, you can imagine how stressful it is to decide what's best for that loved one. But then also to compare that against what would they have wanted? Am I making a decision that lines up with their wishes? An advanced directive for healthcare allows you to state what your wishes are so that your family is not left to guess. And it also allows you to say who gets to make the decisions for you. I've had people who they may want one parent to make financial decisions for them or medical decisions for them, but they don't want the other parent to do it. Or they may have children and you don't want all your children making certain decisions for you. You may want one or two, but the others you don't know. They might be like, nah, let her go. Let her go. Because they know what they might be getting after a result. You may just got on their nerves. So you want to make sure you have the right people making those medical decisions for you. And the way you do that is through an advanced directive for healthcare. I do want to mention that if you live in another state, it might be called something different. So it could be an advanced directive for healthcare, healthcare power of attorney. There's some other ones too, but I don't know all of the other names. Financial power of attorney. Who makes financial decisions for you if you are not able to? And what kind of decisions can they make without having to go to court to make those decisions? And if there's ever a situation where you needed someone to be permanently over your finances, you get to name who that person would be so that if a court has to appoint a conservator over your estate, which means someone who has full control to manage your money, you can name who you would want to serve in that capacity, and the court will appoint that person as long as the court finds that it's in your best interest. Life insurance and other benefits, we want to make sure that they sync with our estate plan. Your estate plan is not like your if you have a will or you have a trust, it's not likely to change your beneficiaries that are listed in your life insurance policy. And so when you have a life insurance policy, you want to make sure it syncs with what you have in your will or your trust so that there's no conflict about how things will go, because that life insurance policy is going to govern, it's going to control over your will or your trust. So we want to make sure they sync. And I really thank y'all for your feedback on this. I'm having fun. So I appreciate y'all just let me know how this is resonating with you as I go through this information. Estate planning also includes making funeral arrangements. You want to make sure that to the extent possible, if you have preferences, I know I have some, like I've gone to some funerals. I don't know about y'all, but I think every time I go to a funeral, I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I might want that, but I don't want that. It's like I know more of what I don't want than I know of what I do want. Because some stuff I'm just like, if y'all do that at my funeral, we're gonna have some problems. So it could be helpful to make it clear as to what you would want in your funeral arrangements. Then also what could help to to take some of the financial burden off of your family members. If you've already prepaid some things, purchased a burial plan that covers the casket and the plot and all those things can take a burden off your family. And it gives them fewer things to fight about. Yeah, I know folks be fighting about those funerals. Boy, I tell you. The thing that's most important though is that you look at what matters most to you. So what matters to me is not going to matter to you. And other people here in this conversation, everybody's going to have values that are more important. Some values that are more important to you than others. So whatever plan you create, it needs to address the things that matter most to you. Is it important to you that we have clear instructions for your agents and beneficiaries so they're not left guessing? Is flexibility important versus having a more fixed situation where you're basically giving them step-by-step instructions about what you want. Some people want to give the people that they've named as agents over their estate planning documents. They may want to have them have more flexibility. Is privacy important to you? If privacy is important, you might consider creating a will instead of a trust. I mean, scratch that. If privacy is important to you, then you might consider creating a trust instead of a will. A trust is going to be a private document that's only between the people you name as trustees and possibly the beneficiaries, if you want it that way. Whereas a will is going to be something that's probated in the court and then it becomes a public record that anybody can have access to. So if privacy is important, you might look at creating a trust as the basis of your plan instead of a will. If you have minor children, you might want to make sure you have some subtrusts in your plan so that if they're still minors after you pass away, that they're not getting the assets directly. Because not only is it just not practical to leave a lot of money or to leave a house or some kind of property to a minor directly, but it's also against the law. The law will not allow minors to inherit certain property, certain amounts of money. So you need to have some kind of a plan in place for someone else to take responsibility of that money or that asset for that child. You may have loved ones who are disabled that you need to provide for. You don't want to give them money outright because it could disrupt other things they have going on. So a lot of times when people have disabilities, they will receive SSI or Medicaid, which is based on income and assets. So let's say you leave someone $100,000 because you love your sister who has a disability, you want to make sure she's taken care of. Unless you leave it to her in a trust, it could disrupt her ability to receive SSI as a monthly income, and it could disrupt her ability to receive Medicaid to pay for her healthcare expenses. So you can leave her assets into a trust to where she still gets those benefits, but then she also has what you left her as supplemental income or supplemental resources. Let's say that she wants to get some new clothes, or she wants to get a new bike, or she wants to go on a trip, or someone wants to, if she's not able to decide those things on her own, there might be the person caring for her may want to bless her with those things. You can leave money in a trust that can be used to help enhance the quality of their life. So you don't want to leave it to them directly because that could impact their ability to receive other financial resources. If you have an inheritance that you want to leave to your surviving spouse, you might put it in a trust or have your estate plan arranged around that goal so that you don't have your surviving spouse end up like the people I mentioned before, where the surviving spouse's right to stay in the home was impacted by her stepchildren's desire to sell the home. You may want to protect your loved one's inheritance from creditors. You may love your family member and want to provide for them, but you know that they have made some financial decisions that may not have been the wisest decisions, but you still want to leave them something. So you may leave it to them in a trust so that their creditors don't get their hands on it. You may have a desire to ensure that your legacy not only benefits your children, but also your grandchildren, maybe even great grandchildren. So we need to be creative about how we structure your estate plan with those goals in mind. And then finally, some people want to contribute to their community with their estate planning. They may have covered make sure, let me know if y'all can't hear me. It looks like my mic was going down. But they may have covered their family members in other ways, and now they want to bless some kids in the community that it's important to them, or make some kind of impact outside of their family, maybe even give to their church or their religious organization, their sorority, their fraternity, their college. Any of those groups you can leave things to through your estate planning. And the way that we structure your estate plan will be based on what your individual goals are. And I have a question here. It says, does a person really need to purchase insurance if they have bank accounts that can take care of their final plans? It really depends on what you want. So some people do say, I'm not going to get life insurance because I just will provide for my family through my bank accounts and investments or whatever else you may have. Some people may say, I'm going to do life insurance in addition to that so that they can even have more. It's really going to depend on what your financial goals are for yourself and for your loved ones. One thing about life insurance is that there are certain tax benefits to the beneficiaries to where they are able to avoid certain taxes when they receive money as a beneficiary to a life insurance policy versus receiving money from a bank account. That's something that I won't be able to go into detail with today, but there are some ways that people might decide that it is more financially beneficial to leave money through life insurance versus bank accounts. I would say that's a question that you would be best. It would be best to discuss it with a financial advisor because they are able to look at all those different things and help you figure out where at your time in life what's going to make the most sense to you as time moves on, and then also for the people that you want to benefit after you're gone. So I would say, just as a short answer to that question, it's going to depend on your personal circumstances. And if you really want to dig deep into that question, that would be something to discuss with your financial advisor. If you don't have one, to get a financial advisor that you can have that conversation with. And someone said they want to talk with me about setting up a trust. I would love to do that. That's part of why we're here, so that I can share with you all how to get in touch with me to work with me if you would like to. At the end, we'll talk a little bit about the process that our firm follows and our pricing and how to get scheduled with us. The first step here can be to schedule a design meeting where we will have you complete a very in-depth intake form, and then we'll have a one-on-one meeting where we'll talk through what your wishes are. Someone asks, is a trust more advantageous if you own property to include a house and farm along with financial assets? What I will say with that is there are definitely benefits for in having a trust versus having a will as your estate plan if you own more than like significant assets, if you own multiple pieces of real estate, whether it's your house, land, other financial assets. A trust can provide you with, like I mentioned before, the privacy that you may not want all of your business out there, where a will is going to be a public document. And then that trust can also allow for assets to transfer more seamlessly. Instead of your family members having to go through probate, there's a successor trustee who will be put in place that if you're not able to manage your assets yourself or something happens to you, you pass away, there's someone else who can immediately take over the responsibility of managing your assets without having to get a court order. And so it is important that, with a trust, it just, to me, it gives a little more flexibility. There's ways you can put some of that flexibility and some of those detailed instructions in your will. But with the trust, I just believe that it could be a better tool for customizing things. So I guess to answer that again, because I know sometimes I kind of go off and then I'm like, wait, let me get back. So to answer that more directly, is a trust more advantageous if you own property? There are ways that you can customize your trust to have benefits that I think will make a trust more advantageous to you, especially the fact that you don't want there to be a lot of delay between the time of your passing and someone being able to take over your assets if you have a lot of things going on, because that they're going to have to okay, get a handle on everything and then get the court's permission to be over the estate, and that could cause there to put some of the assets at risks. Another thing I will say about a will versus a trust is that a will, a lot of times when people have a will, they'll say, all of my property is going to be split between these people. You can say, my house goes to this person, my car goes to that person, my land goes to these people. You can name all of those things, but let's say you buy a new house or you get new property. Then you have to go and redo your will and address all of those things again. If you have a trust, you can add things into your trust. You can take things out. So you can address the assets you own now when you create your trust. But then there's also the flexibility that if assets change, let's say that you sell something or you acquire something new, you don't have to necessarily change your trust every time something changes. So there can be advantages to having a trust versus a will if you own a lot of different assets, especially if there are a lot of different types of assets, and particularly if those things can change over time. Um, Someone was wanting to know if I have financial advisors that I recommend. I actually don't have any. I have a few that I can mention, and I may when I what I'll do when I send out the follow up email to this, I'll make sure that I list any financial advisors that I have worked with or that my clients have worked with, and that could be a starting point for anyone who may need a financial advisor. So the big question is what happens if you die without a solid estate plan? In a nutshell, what I'll say is state law is going to determine everything. You will not be able to say who gets what and who's in charge. It's going to be based on state law. And a court is going to decide how that state law should be applied. Your possessions are going to be distributed to your heirs at law, and that's going to be determined by state law. If you don't have an estate plan that names who's over your estate, a judge decides who's going to take custody of minor children or disabled adults who you're caring for. They're going to appoint someone to administer your estate, and it may not have been the person that you would have chosen. Also, a judge is going to appoint someone to manage any assets or money that your children inherit from you. So I mentioned the case at the beginning where I had a client where their mother passed, and before their mother passed, another family member passed and left them life insurance money. So what ended up happening is that the money that was owed to the mother, ended up being split between various members of her heirs. It was we had surviving spouse, we had children, we had grandchildren in there. So the assets were distributed to those different people. But when it came to the minor children, the court had to appoint another attorney. So I'm on there as an attorney. They had to appoint another attorney to represent the interests of each group of children. So we ended up the case by the end of it, I think we had 4 attorneys on the case, because we didn't have a plan in place to say who would be over those assets for those children before this person died. So we don't want the court having to do all that because that's extra money and it's extra people with opinions involved in your business. We don't want all those people having a say as to what happens to your property. All right. So if you have a plan in place, that keeps you in the driver's seat. You get to decide in advance how things will go. It takes the burden off of your family, helps you to maximize the value of the assets that you pass on, and allows you to leave a legacy that outlives you. I have a few pointers here to help take some of the burden off of estate planning. I know a lot of people like they just don't want to talk about it. They're just like, I don't want to think about what happens after I'm gone. And I understand that. But the one thing that we all know, I know I think it lean on me. Somebody say you have to do something. He said, I ain't gotta do nothing but stay black and die. So we know that we gonna die. That's something they say is nothing in life that's certain but death and taxes. We know that our time will come. So instead of us dreading thinking about it, it should just be part of our way of thinking about our lives. Like what impact do we want to make while we're here, and what impact do we want to leave after we're gone? And I like to encourage people to see estate planning as a gift. This is something I'm doing for those people I love. And the way that we do that is by GIFT is an acronym, is establish your goals, create an inventory, select your fiduciaries, and assemble your team of advisors. And we'll talk a little bit more about what each of those mean. Establishing your goals, that's beginning with the end in mind. And so whenever you do an estate planning with me, I'm going to be talking with you about what are your goals? What are you wanting to accomplish with your estate planning? Who do you want to bless? How do you want to bless them? When do you want to give it to them? We want you to cast that vision so that your beneficiaries can pick up the torch that you leave it, and they can keep on running. That's what we want to do. You also want to create an inventory. A lot of people don't even really understand what they own until they start doing this inventory. We have you list out all of your assets, your real estate, every bank account. We want to know all of your life insurance policies, all of your investment accounts, your cars, all of those things. We want you to give us that information so that we can help you create a plan that best distributes those assets. But we also give that list back to you so that you have it for your records to know this is what I own. You'll be able to tell the people who are handling your estate plan, these are the assets that I own. So if something happens to me, you're not wondering, looking through bags of receipts and trash to try to figure out, okay, where does she bank? Where did she have investment accounts? It's all on the list. So we want you to create an inventory. When you're working with our firm, we'll help you create an inventory, but you can go ahead and start thinking about things now so that you're not trying to scramble and get things together at the last minute. Someone asked if a will can be contested. If so, can an attorney outline language to prevent changes? So yes, a will can be contested, and even a trust can be contested. Trusts are less likely to be contested because you don't have to notify so many people when the trust is actually being administered. But with the will, you have to notify all of the people who are heirs. You also have to notify all the people who are listed on the will as beneficiaries. You have to notify potential creditors. You telling all these people that this person died and they own some property, then there is possible there might be more likely that there'll be some kind of contest. You can structure the will so that you discourage people from contesting it. Basically, we call that a no contest clause. And it says something like, if anybody challenges my will, and we might also put things in there to say, this is what I mean by challenge my will. If you do A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, then you lose everything. And so we discourage people from challenging the will, because if they were going to get something, then they lose whatever they were going to get. So that's what we try to do to prevent contests, or at least discourage them. And we can't. So then once the will is created and the court considers it to be a valid will, there's no room for a will to be changed. The beneficiaries, which are the people who are going to benefit from the will, they can agree to an alternate arrangement from what the person put in their will. But unless everybody's in agreement, that's not going to happen. The wishes that are stated in the will are going to be carried out. So I hope that was helpful to that question. The F in gift is fiduciaries, and fiduciaries are the people that you have named to make certain decisions for you, to handle certain aspects of business for you. So if you are dealing with your will, it's going to be your executors. If you have a trust, it's your trustees. If you have children who are minors, you want to name legal guardians for your minor children. You want to name legal guardian, potential legal guardian for you. If you became incapacitated and you're not able to make decisions for yourself, you can name someone to serve in that capacity. You may want to name agents for your financial decisions, your medical decisions. Through your estate planning, you want to be very intentional about who you select for these different roles, the people who you believe are going to be more likely to carry out your wishes and more likely to do what's best for the people that you want to benefit from your estate plan. And then finally, assemble your team of advisors. So you want to have an attorney to help you draft your estate plan documents, but you also would want to include any financial advisors. So if y'all call into these financial advisors and y'all end up hiring me for your estate plan, make sure that I know them and that we talk to each other so that we can make sure that your financial plan and your estate plan match up with each other. Insurance agents, you want to include them. If you own land, you want to consult with some land use experts to see, does this plan that I have to leave my land to the next generation make sense in light of projections you may be making? So for example, I'm making this up on the fly, so I'm hoping that I get it right. But let's say that you have a farm and it's in a rural community where there's not a lot of development going on. You may involve a land consultant and they'll say, hey, We're actually hearing that they're planning to build a Walmart here, or they're planning to do some commercial development, and your land may be in the midst of that. So we want to create an estate plan that accommodates for that. So it might be that we create a plan that prevents your property from becoming commercial property. Or we might create a plan that makes it easier for your family members to sell in the event that a really great opportunity comes up. But you might even put a little note in there to say, don't take the first offer. Make sure that you negotiate and do your research and then be willing to sell, because I want you to get the most out of the inheritance that I'm leaving you. So you want to get professionals involved in every aspect. If you own a business, get someone to come and do an evaluation of your business. Don't just leave it to your kids until y'all split it. See what it's worth, and then see what's going to be the best way for me to leave this so that my children or other loved ones actually benefit from this business, and it doesn't just be a burden that they now have to figure out. To envision your estate planning as a gift again. Like, just, it's a gift. It's a gift to your family, for your community, and it's a gift for yourself. One thing that I love to hear from my clients when I do estate planning with them is how much the process provides them with clarity. Things they never thought about, questions they never answered, considerations they never made. Now they're thinking, I actually like thought about it and created a plan for it. And that peace that they have, knowing that everything is clear and in writing and it's enforceable, that is like priceless, because the benefit that it adds to the family, it's just so much. It outweighs all of those crazy situations where people are fighting over a little bit of assets in court and losing everything to attorney's fees and court fees and all that stuff. So even with all that, there's a lot of people who are still thinking, maybe I could still do this myself. Like, Veronica, I know that you got fees and I don't feel like paying them. Can I just do it myself? And the answer to that is, of course, you can do it yourself, but I just don't advise it because there's just too many pitfalls. I've been doing this work now for directly, I've been doing estate planning and probate now for, I guess, 8 or 9 years, going on 10 years. And I've seen like all of the mess. Many of y'all know I work with heirs property. So I've seen what happens in the first generation, the second, the third, the fourth. And I just don't advise people trying to do this on their own, because there's just so many things that come up in the estate planning process that you just wouldn't even think about unless you've actually been through it. Not only for me have I done a ton of estate plans and done a ton of estates, done a ton of heirs property cases, but I have colleagues who have as well. So if I come across a weird situation, I'm not going to figure it out on my own. I'm going to reach out to my colleagues and say, hey, have y'all dealt with this before? What do you recommend? And so you have access to that through working with an attorney, instead of just going at it by yourself where you don't know what you're missing, you don't know what to include. You're just kind of out there hoping that whatever you put in place is going to be a sound situation for your family after you're gone. So, like I said, I encourage you to choose an attorney and choose an estate planning attorney. There are many attorneys out there of all different backgrounds, and you may have a cousin who's an attorney. They may work for Walmart. They may work for the biggest corporation in the United States of America. And you think, well, if they work for them, surely they can do my estate plan. But if they are not an estate planning attorney, do not ask them to do this for you, because that is outside of their wheelhouse. You want to have an estate planning attorney who can help you about who can help you plan around retirement benefits, providing for family members with special needs, long-term care planning, managing family land, succession planning for any business associated with your land. Whatever situation you have when you're interviewing attorneys, ask them if they've dealt with it before. Choose someone you feel comfortable with and someone who understands and appreciates your personal, familial, and cultural values. I think that's so important. A lot of times, people are working with attorneys who don't understand their family background and their family dynamics, and they're giving them recommendations based on a whole different set of facts. So choose someone who kind of understands some of the dynamics that your family may be dealing with. If my things will move for me. We want to make sure we avoid certain pitfalls like unintentionally creating heirs property. I leave my one house to my 5 kids. Y'all have fun and figure it out. We don't want to do that. I know I got some of my heirs property clients on here. Y'all know that is not a good look for the family who's left behind. Not planning for medical and long-term care expenses, tax issues that could come up. The tax laws are changing. Depending on who in office, they change here and there, here and there. And so you want to have somebody who knows about the seesaw of tax law changes that we're experiencing. And then the pitfall is not hiring the right professionals. So here is where we talk about next steps. What does my firm offer? So I have here 2 different plans, a trust-based plan and a will-based plan. Some of you are going to have heard things that make you say, I think I would want to trust. Some of you heard things to say, I think a will would be fine for me. What I will say is you may not even know that based on this conversation. But what we do, we have the next step in the process would be to have a design meeting with me, which is a one-on-one conversation. I mentioned this earlier. We'll have you complete a very in-depth form where you put all this information in and then you send it to us and we'll have a meeting. It could be in person or we can do it by Zoom, just like this, one-on-one, where we talk through what specific things do you want in your plan. So you may not know if you want a trust-based plan or will-based plan. That's not something you have to decide before you decide to work with us. The way we do it is that you can schedule that 1 hour design meeting, and it's a $400 meeting that you would pay for. And whatever plan we end up recommending to you, we would apply that $400 to that plan. So I think the next slide has our pricing on there. So we have a fee structure in place depending on what level of planning you want and the makeup of your family. For many clients, they know they don't own a lot of assets and they just want a very simple foundational plan in place. So that's where we have our safety net plan, where we basically say all the property I own goes to these individuals, and this is who I want over my estate. We're not customizing it. I want my house to go here. I want my land to go here. I want this bank account to go here. We're just saying everything split equally, go to these folks. We do try to put some things in place so we don't create heirs property, some ways that the family can have a little flexibility. But that's good for young adults. You sending your child off to college, you want to make sure they have some kind of basic plan in place so that if they're sick, you don't go to the hospital and the doctor say, well, they're an adult, you can't make decisions for them. You'll have legal authority to be able to make decisions for them if they nominate you to serve in that role for them. We have a foundational will-based plan for people who may have a little bit more complexity to their estate, but they still want a will structure. And then we have our trust-based plans on the right side, where it could be a revocable trust, which is what I call like our standard estate planning trust, or it could be an irrevocable trust, particularly for elder planning. If you're trying to figure out how do I create a plan to not have my family paying a lot of money out of pocket to pay for my care if I go to a nursing home, or how to protect my assets in the event that I have to go to a nursing home, then we have that plan in place for that situation. And as I mentioned, we get started by scheduling a design meeting, and it's a $400 meeting that you will pay. If you decide after we do the design meeting that you don't want to move forward, then at least you have talked through what your wishes are and you have a solid plan that you can then take anywhere else and then say, this is what I know I want in my estate plan. And then they can help you with the document side of things. So, you'll come through that conversation. I think is often the most valuable for a lot of people because we just talk about things that you may have never thought about. So that is how you get started. You will start by scheduling a design meeting. And I have here a QR code that you can scan to get to our scheduling page and go ahead and get scheduled. You can make that initial payment, put your information in, and find a date that's going to work for you for us to have this initial meeting. So I would love to work with each of you who are on the call. I know some of you we're already working together, and we'll continue to work through that process together. But if you have any questions, this is the time we can ask. You can ask them in the chat, or we'll allow you to unmute and ask a question. I do just ask that you keep your questions broad so you're not putting all your business out there, because this is recorded and it's going to go out to people that you don't know. So we don't want to put all your business out there. But if you have general questions like the ones that have already been asked, then feel free to ask them now. But as I mentioned before, I would love to work with you all. I hope that with seeing the prices that we have for our different plans, I hope that you can see how, yes, it's an investment, but hopefully you will spare your family many, many more dollars. And you will also spare them heartache. You will spare them just the confusion of not knowing what to do after a loved one has gone by putting a solid plan in place. And again, we customize that plan so that it fits your situation. And some of my clients that are on here now know that we will have as many meetings as we have to get it right. Because we want to make sure that you walk away feeling confident in whatever we put together for you. So with that being said, I am going to take my slides off. I'm going to put a link to scheduling a design meeting in the chat, and I will entertain any questions. I know we had some stuff in the chat. Okay, someone asked if I am licensed, what state am I licensed in? I'm licensed in the state of Georgia. I do have contacts and colleagues in the New York City area, and I can share that information when I send out the follow-up email. I make sure I put some New York attorney names in there. If anybody has any others that they need help with, any other states that are not Georgia, let me know. But I am licensed here in Georgia. Florida, okay, we'll send some Florida names as well. I do want to say that I am grateful to all of you for being here tonight and for just your questions and your participation, your support, your encouragement. It's really been a great time, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk with you all today. Mm-hmm. I see someone said the trust-based fee structure had line items for couples, joint, and individual. Clarify if married couples may have separate trusts. So yes, so we structure it so that you can have an individual trust, or you can, and that would be just if you're not married and you just have a trust for yourself. Or sometimes people are just like, I'm doing my estate plan over here. You do what you want to their spouse over there. But then sometimes couples come together and they are, their assets are not joint assets. And so then they will want to create separate trusts. And so that's where that separate trust plan structure, price structure came from. But then others, they have very much aligned estate planning goals. Their assets are the same. So they want to keep it that way and have a joint trust. So that's why I have the different pricing. I will say that if you're in a state that's a community property state, you may not be able to do let me not get outside my lane. What I will say is, in a community property state, you may not be able to do the same kind of separate trust or joint trust. It may be a different situation because their laws are different when it comes to property. But here in Georgia, we can do a separate trust for married couples where each couple have their own trust, or we can do a joint one, depending on how aligned their assets are and their beneficiaries and their goals and everything. So thank you all for the great feedback. It's very, very helpful. I will ask y'all, when I send a follow-up email, I'm also going to put a link in there for just a testimonial. If you wouldn't mind leaving 2 or 3 sentences to let us know how it was for you. It's something that we can put on our website and share with others so that they know that they need to sign up for this webinar and come get this information. So if y'all wouldn't mind, I would appreciate when we send out that follow-up email that you just take a moment to do a brief testimonial about your experience on the webinar.
Mm-hmm. I have a question.
Yes.
What does it mean to fund the trust?
So with the trust, you basically are creating a shell where you've put all your specifications in there, who you
Mhm.
want to be in charge, who you want to get what and when.
Mhm.
But the trust is going to be like an empty shell until you fund it. So you're basically changing the ownership of the assets from your personal name into the name of the trust so that the trust will now own the asset. If you have real estate, that's going to be done through a deed, where we'll actually sign a deed from you as the individual to you as the trustee of your trust. Or
Mhm.
if you have somebody else trustee of your trust, we'll have the deed go to them as trustee of the trust so that it's no longer in your personal name, but it's in the name of the trust. And once that happens, the trust terms can control what happens to those assets. But if you don't actually legally change the ownership to the trust, then it's not going to be controlled by the trust.
Or protected by the trust.
Yes,
Does
depending
that
on if
mean
it's
it's
an asset protection trust. Not all trusts are asset protection trusts. So it depends on how it's structured to see if it has ways of protecting those assets.
Hmm. So is that automatically discussed or explained when an individual desires a trust?
With my firm, it is. That's a conversation that we have. We talk about how important it is to fund your trust.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the signing, we first of all we go ahead and fund the trust with the real estate assets as part of the process that we do. And then we give you a letter that says it's very important that you fund your trust. This is how you fund different assets into your trust. It tells you step by step how to transfer the asset into your trust. And then we have meetings with my paralegal, Sarah, who's really awesome. She's been doing estate planning for about 12, 13 years now. She will walk through the process of how to make sure all of your assets are in your trust. Then she'll have another meeting with you to make sure that you understand it and that you didn't have any questions that came up. She'll see what she can do to help you find the right forms to be able to transfer those assets over. And then we may soon be implementing a process where we'll have another meeting just to make sure that you actually did what we said you need to do, so that you end up with your assets in your trust. That's something that we are considering adding on um, as well. So we do our best to make sure that everything is transferred over. Sarah's really great with supporting people through it. And we basically are willing to do what it takes to support you through that process.
Okay, and where is this document other than with the owner? Where else should it be once it's
What
complete?
document referring to?
I'm assuming that the trust is a document
Yes.
or a
So the trust
document
is
that
the document.
represents what is there.
So we give everyone a hard copy with the original signatures on it, but we also scan a copy of it into the system. So we'll have a copy and we also will give you an electronic copy as well. We always encourage people to keep it in a safe place where it won't get harmed by fire or water or by somebody who doesn't like the way that you left them property in your estate plan. So we say it's important that you protect it. We give you some options for how to protect it. And then we just encourage you to notify the people who need to know so that they will know where to find the documents and they know how to use the documents.
I see. So this is not something that's registered in your local courthouse or anything.
Not a trust. You can
It's
store your will for safekeeping at the courthouse. Um, it can be a good thing, but it also can have its downsides because if your family doesn't know that it is at the courthouse, then they're looking all around for it and can't find it and assume you don't have one. So that could be an issue, or it also could be an issue where if something happens at the courthouse, it gets into the wrong hands, there's a fire, it's outside of your control over how those assets, how that will was stored. So for people who want more control over their will, they might keep it at home or they might put in a safe deposit box at their bank. There's a lot of different options for how a person might store their estate plan. And it's important that they notify the people who might be responsible for carrying it out where to find those documents. And some people we
Mhm.
say, some people will want to notify their family and give them a copy. Some people would rather not share a copy with them until they need it. They want them to know where it is, but they don't want to give them a copy first. So we just talk through all of that with our clients based on what their individual situation is.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any questions they want to ask? Okay, well, I just thank you all again for being here. And if you know how to reach me, I have my information up there, but I also will be sending a follow-up email that has my contact information as well. So I'm looking forward to working with hopefully many of you. And either way, hope you have a great evening. You also I just wanted to let everybody know you can find us on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's called the Family Land Law Firm. And if you want to find me on there, I put all kinds of videos up. Whenever I feel up for it, I'll put something up there. So you might find some information there that would be helpful as well. But
Mhm.
hope everyone has a wonderful evening and I look forward to talking with you all soon.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome and take
Mhm.
care.
All right. You too. I hope your family is well too.
Yes, everybody's well.
Good.
Grateful for that.
Good.
Hope the same for yours.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.